All right, let's talk Nebraska Cornhuskers football on the Our Lads Football Network, and that means Steve Marik is back joining us once again from Rivals. How's it going, Steve?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
All right, Steve. So Matt Rhule is in. He's the man. What's the initial feeling like as far
Yeah.
as the fans are concerned?
As far as the fans are concerned, that's an interesting question. So, in my personal opinion, there was never going to be one person that was going to unite the entire fan base. That's just not realistic in a place like Nebraska with a fan base this big and this passionate and this full of opinion. But for the most part, I think a majority of the fans understand that Matt Rhule is an adult, professional, somebody who has been there and done that. And that is not what Nebraska has had for the past 5 seasons with Scott Frost.
Okay.
So I just think that what Matt Rhule has shown in his career, all the different stops he's had, and how he has built up programs that have fallen on hard times. Look at Temple, look at Baylor, this
Yes.
awful situation that he went in Waco and turned things around in 3 years and 2 years, and then had that excellent third year in Waco. That's exactly what Nebraska needs, because Nebraska is exactly like those programs. Maybe not to the Baylor extent, but they are on hard times right now, and they need to right the ship. And I think personally, Matt Rhule is he was a home run hire, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree because it could have. I mean, look, a lot of people, when you're a fan, you tend to think, of course, about the best possible coach you can land, like some Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Your team is always the best team. You should be the destination. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned over the years, though, is that you can't. That to me is just like that's a bonus. If you land a guy like that, that should never be expected. That should almost be like a miracle. And wow, I can't believe it happened to us. We're so lucky. But what you should always try to do as a fan is just hope that you avoid the poor hire. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that I get nervous about every time my team's about to hire a head coach is because that could just kill your team, your program for years. And Matt Rhule, if anything, I think worst case scenario, he's a safe hire. That's the worst case scenario. He's a safe hire, but he's better than that because he's got the track record.
Yeah, I think like there's not of course there's always, when you look at somebody in a new hire, there's always like things could go wrong, because like look, we can't tell the future. We're not like sorcerers over here. We can't like see how things are going to go. But in my opinion, he's just so different from what Nebraska has had with Scott Frost. It just like leads me to think that things are going to go well here. And that's crazy to think, considering we're talking about Nebraska football and how bad it's been in during this stretch that we've been on of poor football. But like I said, I just go back to, he's a professional, he's an adult, he is a football coach, he's a grinder. Those are all things he talks about, winning the line of scrimmage, both on the offensive side and defensive side.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah,
Especially in
absolutely.
Nebraska. We talked about that. I mean,
Yeah,
almost every time we talked, that's what we talked about. The line of
yeah,
scrimmage, Nebraska, homegrown, big boys, and that sounds
yeah.
like that's returning.
Yeah, he's not talking about, he's not like the last guy, where the last guy's introductory press conference, he was asked about how he needs to adapt to the Big Ten, and the last guy said, well, I hope the Big Ten needs to adapt for us.
Yeah.
Like that was not the right move. And obviously that quote is going to go down in infamy around here. But Matt Rhule, obviously we knew that he was going to crush the press conference, because the days leading up, the days leading up to the official hire, inside Nebraska, the rival site that I work for, we had an idea that it was going to be him. So we were just like hammering the research, hammering the stories on him to get prepared. And from what we've gathered, he's everything that Nebraska needs. He's a defense first guy. He wants to play a brand of offensive football that, what I really like, wins in the elements, where it can win when it's hot in August and then it's really, really cold and crappy outside in November. And that's just, it just speaks volumes to how good of a coach that he is, his vision, his philosophy, how to win here. So I don't know. I think it's a really, really good hire. Most people around here are really, really happy about it. Now that he's in here as head coach, the shift from the fan base kind of moves over to his staff, and that's a whole nother discussion that we can get into if you want. But the staff is going to be really important of who he brings to Lincoln.
Yeah, because I think all you have to do is take a look at what's happened the last couple of years with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. I don't know what happened. If there was, I know what happened is, but how long it took for him to realize what he needed to do to win at Michigan was to go back to doing what he did best, especially at Stanford. And that's look, and in the Big Ten, this, which is perfect for Nebraska as well, is, we have to have a really good offensive line. Just like Matt Rhule said, we have to win the line of scrimmage, got to run the football, got to play good defense and special teams, all of that stuff. You don't need this high flying spread offense stuff. Let the West Coasters and the Southeastern guys, let them do that kind of stuff because they're built for that. But when you're up in Nebraska, come on. I mean, I just can't. As a college football fan, I love it when the old, the big time programs. I really like it when they kind of get it, and Nebraska looks like they've gotten it. And I think that's really good. Just like I'm really happy for I don't know, who knows what's going on at Colorado with Deion Sanders, but they can't get worse. So they're going to get better. Now, how much better, who knows? But what I'd like to see is let's get some of those Nebraska-Colorado games back again. Come on, bring that rivalry back.
Oh, I think that rivalry is brewing because Nebraska opens the 2023 season at Minnesota with PJ Fleck. That's always a big game around here because a lot of people around here don't like PJ Fleck.
Okay.
I think he's a really good coach, but other people just don't like the things outside of the on the field stuff about the way he talks and speaks and dresses and all that stuff that I don't care about. I just care about the football. I think PJ Fleck's great. But after Minnesota, they have another road game, and that's in Boulder, Colorado. That's Deion Sanders.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
the rivalry's back. For at least this season, this next season. Yeah. So Nebraska is headed to Colorado in their second game of the season next year. Great.
And it kind of went viral last week. I was covering a Nebraska Creighton men's basketball game on Sunday in Omaha, and my phone started blowing up, and I look at it, and the Colorado athletic director during his press conference before introducing Deion Sanders was basically pleading with Colorado fans to not sell their tickets to Nebraska fans because recently Nebraska has gone to, Nebraska fans are notorious for going to away stadiums and just painting the place red. So it was like that the last time the Huskers were in Boulder. I forget which year it was, but it was fairly recently for Scott Frost's early years. And the place was red. It was.
Oh, it's going to be like that again anyway. So.
Oh yeah. For sure.
Nice
but
try.
yeah. Matt Rhule, Deion Sanders. It's just going to be a really, really fun time. Really cool scene in Boulder.
I in general, and I really don't know if fans realize how much this sport's going to explode when the 12-team playoff comes. I don't think they understand it. And that's why it's been so disappointing to not have that in this sport for so long. Because it's just going to, instead of like 5 or 6 teams, maybe 7 have a chance each year. Now it's like 25, 30 teams every season are going to have a chance, and it's going to make things exciting. And it's great to see programs, like I just said, like Nebraska and Colorado kind of getting back going again. And I know that's going to be the case with Nebraska. You mentioned the coordinators. So does he have any coordinators yet?
So he has one coordinator. That's the offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield.
Oh.
Marcus Satterfield spent the past 2 seasons at South Carolina. From what we have learned at Inside Nebraska, it was probably going to be his final year in Columbia anyway, because he was kind of on the hot seat.
Yeah, that was really interesting what happened there. Yeah. It's like the fans couldn't wait to get rid of him. And then they had those 2 awesome games at the end of the season, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they were like, "Uh-oh."
And there are those last 2 games of the season. There are some rumors. There's no way to confirm it. I mean, it's probably never gonna be confirmed, but there were some rumors around the South Carolina fan base that Marcus Satterfield was not the one calling the plays for those last 2 games, which exploded in yards and points. I mean, they
I
put
don't know
up
about that.
63 points. So I don't know. There's just a stark difference between the rest of South Carolina's games.
Well, we'll find out in the bowl game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll see how South Carolina plays against Notre Dame. Let's see if their offense continues to roll or not without him.
Yeah, if it's really good, then maybe something was to it. Who knows? But anyway, so Satterfield comes
Do they have
over.
a connection?
He's a long time. Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a great point because almost everybody that Matt Rhule has brought onto his staff right now. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 6 guys right now officially. He does not have a defensive coordinator yet. 6 guys officially, and they all are longtime Rhule assistants. Satterfield, I think, first coached with Matt Rhule when he was the receivers coach at Western Carolina. And then Rhule brought him back, and he was his OC when Rhule was the head coach at Temple. He coached tight ends at Baylor. He coached with Rhule with the Carolina Panthers too. So, I mean, it's just the list goes on with all of these guys. Ed Foley, if you remember him, old Temple guy, spent around 10 years at Temple. He was the interim head coach twice for the Owls during their bowl appearances. Kind of went viral on social media for a couple of his football sayings. He just seems like a really fun, down to earth, just football dude. I'm excited to talk to him. So Ed Foley is going to be the special teams coach. EJ Barthel is coming from UConn to coach running backs. Evan Cooper is a former Temple football player, I believe, that played for Matt Rhule, and he's going to coach DBs, the secondary at Nebraska. Terrence Knighton, former NFL player, nicknamed Pot Roast. He's coaching the D-line. This is his first big-time Power 5 position job, so I'm really excited about that. And then they have a strength and conditioning coach, Corey Campbell, coming as well, another former Rhule guy. These are all Rhule guys.
But no, is there any sort of like whispers as far as the defensive coordinator spot?
Okay, so that's been kind of much like the head coaching search itself with athletic director Trev Alberts. That was really like tight, like nothing was getting out until the very, very end. We haven't really heard a lot about defensive coordinator. Phil Snow's name has been thrown around, but Phil Snow is 66, got fired from the Panthers. He's been a Rhule's D coordinator for a long time. So I don't know how realistic that is. I would be shocked if it was.
Maybe it's a fallback option only.
Yeah, maybe. There's also been, I'd say rumors, again, nothing confirmed, but the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia, his last name is Schumann. His first name is escaping me, but he's the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia. And his name has been thrown around, but again, nothing.
I guess all you have to do is just take a look at Matt Rhule's coaching tree, and then you come up with
exactly. Yeah.
Bunch of candidates.
Whoever it ends up being going to be an assistant, probably.
What about the scheme then on defense compared to offense? What do you think? Do you have any idea, or is it going to be you won't know until the coordinator?
That's hard to That's hard, in my opinion. That's hard to answer until the D coordinator gets here. Nebraska has been pretty multiple on defense under Eric Shenander, the prior defensive coordinator who was let go early in the season. Bill Bush, a longtime, well-loved coach here at Nebraska. He did an excellent job taking over on an interim basis, the defense, and made a really bad Husker defense early in the season. And he did magic. He turned them around. It wasn't like they weren't like really, really good on defense, but they weren't as nearly as bad as they were at the beginning of the year. So Bill Bush deserves a lot of credit. Unfortunately, he will not be retained, we believe, with Matt Rhule's staff. So not breaking news, but a few days ago, we confirmed that the only coaching member of the previous last year's staff to be retained by Rhule is going to be Donovan Raiola, the offensive line coach. Okay. And that got the fan base riled up because a lot of people don't like Donovan Raiola because the offensive line was absolutely bad, just really, really bad last year. But in my opinion, that doesn't really necessarily mean it was Donovan Raiola's fault, because he walked into a room that was
Yeah,
going to be bad
it's one
anyway.
season. Yeah,
The best offensive line coach in the
yeah,
universe was not gonna walk into the
yeah.
Nebraska offensive line room and do his thing and make it a really good unit. It just wasn't going
Sure.
to happen. Nobody was going to make that unit even average. It's just
Sure.
not, the talent level is not up to par to where it needs to be in the Big Ten to be good and keep your quarterback upright and have him not sustain the injuries like quarterback Casey Thompson did all season.
You know, the thing is that the one position, coach, that is getting more and more important, especially in college, every year is the strength and conditioning coach. That
Yeah.
is really an underrated position because you've got the obvious ones, but sometimes it's always okay. Offensive line is next, or we'll go in some other direction. But to me, it's just as important as any assistant coaches you hire at the college level. It's just massively important.
And that's a great point, because a lot of the angst, a lot of the finger pointing going on last year at Nebraska in terms of offensive line was the strength and conditioning coach. So Nebraska's offensive line were just giants. They are massive human beings. They don't really move all that well. So I think maybe the shift with Corey Campbell now in his first season as the strength and conditioning coach, taking over for Zach Duval, who was the previous regime's strength and conditioning coach. Maybe Nebraska's offensive linemen aren't going to be these 330 pound, 320 pounds, 6'10", 6'9" offensive linemen. Like, how often do you see a 6 foot?
Well, if they are, they better be pushing the hell out of the pile. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just hard for those guys to get low, and low man wins football. So maybe that's going to be a shift that we see in the future with Nebraska, is not these absolutely massive, slow offensive linemen, more smaller dudes, quick, that could get on the run, pull, lead up on the edge, things like that. So we'll see. But I think that you bring up a great point. The strength and conditioning program needs to be overhauled at Nebraska. And I think that they have a vision to do that.
All right, now let's talk about some of the other things that are going on that might be important, and it's on everybody's mind, so why not ask it? And that's the transfer portal. Seems like half of every team now is out on the transfer portal, switching teams. So when you have a head coaching change, that's really a even bigger story. So this is how you get better quick. So is it too early, or what's up right now? Has there been any additions or major subtractions yet?
There have not been any additions, but there have been quite a few subtractions. Okay. But if you, again,
good subtractions.
Yes. Okay. If you take the pulse of the fan base, there have been 13 official guys transfer out. I think 11 of them, 10 or 11, I don't have the list in front of me, have been scholarship guys that were never going to play. A lot of them were never going to play. So you could call it trimming the fat. You can call it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And I think Matt Rhule and his staff are coming in here, and they're going to do it their way, and they're going to bring in their guys, and they're going to take a good hard look at the transfer portal and bring in people who want to be here and want to compete and want to play, and aren't just going to sit here for 3 or 4 or 5 years and just be on the team and not contribute.
Hey, those are open scholarships. So
yeah, absolutely.
Fresh blood.
There was one. So they weren't all not going to play. So there have been some guys that have entered the transfer portal that you kind of that stings the fan base a little bit. One of them is Ernest Hausman. Okay. He was a true freshman inside linebacker. He was thrown into the fire due to some injuries to starters, but he's an in-state guy from Columbus, Nebraska. It's a small town in Columbus, but he's a 4-star prospect. He had a coming out party against Michigan. Late in the game, or late in the year, it really started to click for Ernest Hausman. He was running sideline to sideline, a 6'2", 220-pound guy, just learning the game. Early in the season, it did not look good for him. You could tell that he was an 18-year-old out there just like trying to keep up. His head was spinning. But later in the year, he was coming up and hitting dudes. He was like laying the wood to guys like Blake Corum, Chase Brown in Illinois. he played fantastic in Iowa, which is a big rivalry game that Nebraska got out with a win. It was a trophy game. It was a great time for Husker fans to win that game that they like never win because the Hawkeyes
That's
just have
true.
their number.
And they needed the win to go to the bowl, to go to the championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome to kind of ruin the Hawkeye fans' hopes of getting the Big Ten title game. So Ernest Hausmann, he entered the portal. Again, guys who enter their name in the portal it doesn't mean they're automatically out. They can always come back in if they want. Now, the chances aren't high of that happening, but it's always a possibility. So Ernest Hausmann, he entered the portal, and that kind of hurt the fan base a little bit because he's one of the brightest young linebackers in the Big Ten. He truly is. Another guy that entered the portal that everybody was kind of like maybe, I wouldn't say upset about, but maybe didn't see it coming was Jamari Butler, an outside linebacker, edge type guy, big, 6'6", 240 pounds. He has a lot of potential, I think. He only played 1 year of high school football in Alabama. He was a basketball player before that. Really athletic dude. But decided he wanted to play football, came to Nebraska, has been behind starting quality guys and just hasn't played a lot. But you always looked at him and be like, man, when he finally gets his opportunity, he's going to be pretty good. He entered the portal yesterday officially. Okay. So
those are the top two names.
Okay. Yeah. No major guys, I think, have outside of Hausmann have really entered the portal at Nebraska. So it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be a wild ride to keep tracking it, and we are here at Inside Nebraska at Rivals. So there's going to be more. There's going to be guys coming in too. So we just haven't gotten to the guys coming in yet.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. I think the fans might have thought that this was going to be like NFL free agency, where as soon as the first day of the transfer portal, like all of a sudden, like if you didn't have anybody come to your team in those first couple of days, that was like a bad sign. I mean, it's been already like almost a week, and I don't see anybody from the portal on my team yet. Well, nobody's really changed much. There's like probably 5% or less than 5% of the players have already transferred from one team to another so far. It's just there's so many opportunities that are still out there. And why would you rush it anyway? You can't tamper, which means that you really haven't had an opportunity to talk to anybody until the season was officially over and you become a transfer player. So, I mean, you got to give these kids time. So, if Nebraska fans are a little bit maybe, I don't know, confused or upset or wondering what's going on with the transfer portal, they should just be calm and it'll get there, because you got to believe that they're going to have, I would say, minimum 10 transfer players?
Yeah, so last year it was around 15.
Oh, they probably have more than that then.
Yeah, and that was like Scott Frost kind of understanding that he had one last season, so he was just like taking dudes and trying to find plug and play guys right away. To try to be Michigan State from 2021, but it did not go that way. I think there's going to be I think it's safe to say there's going to be a big handful of transfers in Matt Rhule's first season, because those first transition years for head coaches and new staffs, it can get rough sometimes. So a key I think that Nebraska fans would like to see, and I think Matt Rhule is really trying to do, is to keep some of the big culture guys at Nebraska already, keep them on.
Sure.
Because it's just really important that you keep the guys who, how should I say this, want to play and see Nebraska win.
Yes. They want to be a part of the rebuild.
Yes. And that just speaks to Garrett Nelson, the best defensive player on Nebraska's defense. He's an edge guy from Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, another in-state guy, a small town guy from out west in the state. He bleeds Husker football. He eats it, breathes it, sleeps it. Well, maybe. we'll see. He has not entered the transfer portal. There were some relationships that he built with the previous staff. You could tell that he really loved those guys. And, you understand it. Like kids, bring him in. I know he really loved Eric Shenander, the defensive coordinator. And look, Eric Shenander's a great guy. He's a really good coach. I think he might have gotten a bad rap for how this season started. Who knows what Garrett Nelson's future holds?
Do you think he's waiting for the defensive coordinator?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of guys are, honestly. That's why it was kind of a shock, I guess, that Ernest Hausmann did it so early, because he doesn't even know who his defensive coordinator is right now. So
Unless he has a
So
specific place in mind that he's been thinking
oh
about
yeah,
all
for sure.
along. Yeah.
For sure. And who knows what other teams and coaches are in his direct messages right now,
Yes.
asking about things. So Garrett Nelson would be a great player to hunker down and bring back, because Matt Rhule needs guys, and he said this in his press conference. He needs guys that want to see Nebraska succeed, not just themselves succeed. Garrett Nelson is absolutely that person. Another guy on the defense that I think would benefit Rhule to try to bring back for, I think it would be his 6th season, and he has that available because of the COVID year, is Colton Feast, another in-state guy from Utan, Nebraska,
Okay.
an incredibly small town. He's an interior defensive lineman, a former walk-on who busted his butt to get where he is, and he was a starter this year, and he was the best interior defensive lineman at Nebraska. A lot of people don't want to admit it, because that would mean you're admitting a walk-on was doing it.
Well.
But go turn on the film, look at him. He was really, really good this. I wouldn't say really, really good, but he was good. He was the best interior lineman Nebraska had, and I think he's a guy that would love to keep Nebraska, like play for Nebraska and see the Huskers win. And he's just in it for the program and not in it for himself. So Garrett Nelson, Colton Feast, I think are two guys that Matt Rhule and his staff should really try to keep for another year.
And look, that's the way I always, because I think about it, and I've been doing this for so long, and as a fan, is look, hey, if the player doesn't want to play there, then what are you upset about? He doesn't want to play for your team. It's your team. I mean, do you want someone that wants to play for your team, or do you want someone that's, maybe, and again, and I like the fact that you have a coach that, because there are a lot of coaches out there that will just bring in recruits and transfers, as many 4-stars that they can get their hands on, and I just need athletes, and I don't care about anything else. But there are coaches out there, and I know one of them, which is Greg Schiano from Rutgers, my in-state program, that will not bring on players to his program unless, they got to fit a certain criteria. And that might mean he has a boatload of 3-stars. Doesn't mean he doesn't want the top guys, but you're not just going to bring a guy in because he's a 4-star. It has to fit the program. He has to fit, just like you said. Who wants to not only be there, but who wants to go to Nebraska? Who wants to see, who's been maybe a Husker fan since they were kids? Who wants to see this through? Those are the guys you want on your program. And if somebody doesn't want to be there, then okay, see you. Good luck. I mean, you weren't a Husker. You weren't the Husker guy I thought you were.
That was exactly the problem that I think Scott Frost ran into, because a lot of people want to talk about Scott Frost's recruiting classes at Nebraska, and they were pretty good if you look at the numbers and the star rankings. But if you go back and look at it, all the guys that made those recruiting classes rank as highly as they did, they ended up leaving and going back home to Florida and Georgia, and they just didn't like it up here because it was different culture.
Yeah.
What needs to happen at Nebraska is you need to identify the talent better. You need to understand who you are really, truly recruiting inside, and ask yourself, is this guy going to want to play against Michigan and Iowa and Illinois in November? It's cold and he's coming at your face, and it doesn't feel good to be out there. Kids in the Midwest grew up doing that. It's not the same in the South. So I think Matt Rhule has been around long enough in his stops to understand what kind of kids thrive in the Midwest, in the Big Ten, that would do well here. So I think some mistakes were made, obviously, in recruiting in the last staff. And I think Matt Rhule and his guys right now understand that it takes a certain dude to want to play in the Big Ten when it gets nasty outside, and guys are coming at your face, and you need to get up and do it again on third down, third and short, fourth and short.
It's easy to recruit a guy like in high school guy, like if it's springtime and the weather's nice and all that kind of stuff. But you really should up there. It should be about, well, just, hey man, it's not going to be like this during the season, and you have to, like you said, you have to enjoy it. And and the only thing you need to look at is Matt Rhule's history too. So what I would do as a fan is I would say, okay, well, this history tells me that we're going to have a pretty good defensive football team and we're going to win some football games. Is that really, whether it's what you're looking for or not, just get used to it, because you had the other with Scott Frost. I'm sure there were a bunch of fans that were like, "Oh man, we're going to be a high flying offensive team. We're going to have all these speed guys, and we're going to fly up and down the field." You're not getting that with Matt Rhule, so get over it. It's more important to win games, isn't it? That's number one. And number two, just again, realize what his track record is. It's going to be defense, special teams. We're gonna be physical, and that's what you're just going to have to deal with as a fan. And look, you got to look at his track record at quarterbacks too. Haven't been all that great. I mean, Baylor and Temple. So finding the right quarterback is going to be important, but I think it could be manageable because he's not going to more than likely get a stud quarterback. So he's going to I'm sure he's going to try to find like a field general, a guy that is really good up here, somebody that is going to be a leader of his football team. And that's sort of like where Cade McNamara is going to Iowa, like a Cade McNamara type.
Isn't that like the perfect fit for McNamara?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So,
but when you the quarterback topic has come up here at Nebraska, and when you look at Rhule's past two stops, at Temple, you look at a guy like PJ Walker. At Baylor, you look at a guy like Charlie Brewer, who was really good at the RPO, the run pass option plays, where he was reading a guy and making one decision and then sticking to that decision and being quick and playing fast after that decision. Who knows what the offense is going to look like with Marcus Satterfield? We can look back at the South Carolina tape that's
true.
Kind of that pro style offense that he was running with Spencer Rattler. So another big thing here is the quarterback situation and Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson, the transfer from Texas, he did okay in his first year here. He didn't have a lot of help from his offensive line. He was under duress constantly. As soon as he would get the ball, he'd be getting hit basically. He has the option to come back for a sixth year. He's basically at this point in his career an assistant coach, a GA.
I think that's a really good quarterback to bring into your first year in your program, to have a guy like that.
It's got to be so. Yeah. It'd be so important and so huge if they could convince Casey Thompson to come back, because you want someone like that in your transition year with the new offensive coordinator, a new offense. And Casey Thompson is an incredibly smart dude. Every time he talks at press conferences, you could just tell that he is going to be a coach when he grows up. And, he's already going to be like next year in November. I think he's going to be 25. He's 24 right now, I believe. So he would just be absolutely perfect for the quarterback situation in Matt Rhule's first year.
Yeah, because just looking here, so PJ Walker, I'm looking at his numbers at Temple the last few years. I think his best season, his last season there, it was only 58%, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So nothing special, nothing great. But even the year before, same thing, 57%, 19-8 ratio. And I'm sure if you take a look at, I don't know how long ago it was when Matt Rhule was at Baylor, but like you said, so Brewer was there during his how many years? 2 years?
So I think Baylor would have been 2017 to 2019.
Yeah, Brewer. So I'm not going to look at his first year. So Brewer's second year, he was 61%, 19-9, almost identical. I mean, the touchdown to interception ratios are almost identical. Brewer was a little bit more as far as a passer, which he was. He has a few more touchdowns. His completion percentage was a little bit higher. But the fact is that he wasn't a superstar player. They didn't have a superstar team offensively. It just wasn't the way that Matt Rhule built his teams. And I think that is the way to go, by the way. I think it's also much easier. Maybe this is why he has so much success rebuilding programs. I think it's a lot easier and a lot quicker to rebuild your team when you're rebuilding it on defense over offense. Mm-hmm. That's why it always takes offenses in the NFL, or even in college, but especially in the NFL, a little bit. It takes them some, especially with a little bit of preseason games, a little bit of time before you all gel together. You got the offensive line's got to gel, the quarterback, the receivers. There's a lot goes into that. With defense, a lot of it is just who's tougher and meaner, and I'm going to go get you kind of thing. Yeah. And so I think that's part of the reason. But having Thompson a quarterback for his first year should be really, really important.
Yeah, and another thing to talk about is his recruiting approach. So if you look at Temple and Baylor, like those teams were never getting the highly sought after 5 and 4 stars.
True.
Matt Rhule made his career in college about on finding the diamonds in the rough, the 2-star, the 3-star guys, getting them on campus and just developing them into football players and watching them flourish. You look at guys like, so this is all from Baylor. James Lynch, he was a defensive lineman, 3-star from Texas, I believe. Jalen Petrie, JT Woods, Terrell Bernard, Tyquan Thornton, all of these guys were under-recruited 3-star guys that the big-time Big 12, SEC schools, Big 10 did not want. They were going to go maybe G5, and Baylor took them. Matt Rhule took them, got them on campus, and developed them. And in their 3rd, 4th years, they started hitting the field, and they just exploded. They took off. All those guys that I mentioned, 3-star athletes, they all got drafted into the NFL. They're all on teams right now. So, and yesterday, not yesterday, a couple days ago, Husker fans just started seeing this kind of recruiting philosophy take into effect, because the very first scholarship commit of the 2023 class for Matt Rhule came from Texas, from a 0-star recruit. His name is Bryce Turner. He's 6'2", 165-pound speed demon. He runs a sub 11-second 100-meter dash, around 20 seconds in the 200-meter dash. He's coming to Nebraska to be a sprinter as well. So that tells you the kind of philosophy, the kind of mindset that Matt Rhule's staff is going in. They will take somebody if he had 0 stars next to his site. We had to get his rivals profile, get a picture of him, and then he was bumped up to 3 stars yesterday. So that just tells you that Matt Rhule sees something that he likes, speed, obviously. So maybe this guy is like the fastest guy out there, but he is deficient in some other football areas.
Coach him up. Strength and conditioning program. Yeah,
exactly. You get him in here, you get him in the program, you get him in the training table, you teach him how to be a receiver, and maybe in 3 years he has something.
There you go.
So that's just it's just an exciting time right now that I think Husker fans should be all in for.
All right, before I let you go, Anthony Grant, does he have any eligibility left?
Yep, he'll come back.
Okay. Trey Palmer.
Trey Palmer is gone. He is entering the NFL draft.
Okay, so Palmer. And speaking of the draft, which other players should we be just keeping an eye on that have already declared, or you think might be going?
So the big 2 is Trey Palmer. Obviously, he had a record-setting single season here at Nebraska. Again, it's Nebraska, so the receiving all-time records aren't that great because. Yeah. Obviously. But again, he was still an incredible receiver here at Nebraska. He was really fun to watch and really talented dude. So he is not coming back. He is training for the NFL draft and getting ready for all that stuff. The other big one to look out for is Caleb Tanner. He tied the record for most games played at Nebraska.
Okay.
So Long just was here forever. Really, really consistent dude. He came as a 4-star prospect out of Georgia. He was kind of billed as like the next really good sack guy to come out of Nebraska, but it just never really turned out that way. His stats aren't going to jump out at you, but he's a football player, and I would not be shocked to see him make an NFL roster. So Caleb Tanner, outside linebacker, edge type guy, kind of on the smaller side at 6'3", 220 pounds around there. But boy, he's tough. He's ferocious. A lot of people like him around here. He was a team captain. So look out for Trey Palmer and Caleb Tanner as the top
those
two
are guys that usually land on practice squads, and then they develop at the next level because they can make, especially at that size, you make special teams. And nowadays that size is not a negative anymore because there's more and more of those players that are fitting roles. You've got the whether you want to call it the hybrid or whatever. But, those kind of guys that can play in the box and they have a lot of speed and they can cover and they could chase, they're becoming, a lot more important in the NFL. So, all right. A lot to talk about here that I'm glad we were able to get through, Steve. And so obviously, if anybody out there wants to follow what's coming up next, and the next big deal is the defensive coordinator position. So, again, you can see it we have it there on the ticker, nebraska.rivals.com, correct?
Yes, Nebraska.rivals.com.
And what's the latest offer for Rivals? What is it usually? It's under $10 a month though, right?
Yeah, it's around $10 a month. Yeah, a little bit
Actually,
under.
I think I was rummaging around it just before I came on. I could have sworn I saw something that said something like for instance, since I don't, it says it right here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I was gonna give a price, but I'm pretty sure I saw something that was like $9 or something like that for the month. What's great about it though is that when you're paying for it, you get everything. That's what I think people need to understand.
Yeah, a lot of people like that you can go on to other teams' message boards and see what they're talking about. It's fun stuff, honestly, to see like kind of what your rival is talking about and maybe talking about you, and it's fun stuff.
So I take it you're a big Armageddon fan?
I love that movie, man. I've seen it maybe like 500 times. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty funny movie. I like that movie too. All right, Steve. So we'll talk to you. We'll probably talk to you again at some point between now and maybe the NFL draft, because there's a lot going on between now and then. Especially,
we'll cover Nebraska's pro day, and I assume Trey. I don't know if Trey Palmer's gonna maybe do his pro day at LSU. He's just that type of guy. I think LSU guys stick together. Okay. So, for the pro day, I'm sure a lot of guys are gonna come at Nebraska. We'll be there. We'll cover it, and maybe we can talk.
And then, of course, right now it's basketball, right? Besides,
Nebraska had a tough loss at Indiana last night, but Indiana's really good, ranked number 14th in the country.
Are they any better, Nebraska?
I think so. It's not your usual Nebraska basketball team that does not care about defense. This group, Fred Hoiberg, has them caring about defense, and worrying about scoring points second. And when that happens, I think it makes it more likely that you become more of a team and you become more of a gel. And it's not like, okay, we're on offense.
Yeah,
it's my turn to get mine. And then next time down, it's your turn. It's not like that at Nebraska. This is more of a team effort. So keep an eye on the Huskers. They have a tough stretch here coming up. They got a top 5 team in Purdue coming to Lincoln on Saturday. And then they're going to Kansas City to play a really good Kansas State team also. So a tough stretch, but this is a grittier basketball team, more of a team-oriented club than Fred Hoiberg has usually had at Nebraska. No, he brought in some transfers, older transfers.
Transfer away, okay.
Yes, for sure. And that honestly, that needed to happen. Fred Hoiberg is on the hot seat for sure. So he needed some veterans over there that play defense and are tough, have that old man kind of strength. Not just 18, 19-year-olds who don't have any muscle. These guys are 23, 24 years old, bulky, care about defense, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's an interesting team this year, but I think one that fans really appreciate.
Well, it'd be good to have some success there because, too, I mean, look, Fred Hoiberg, it's one of those things where you just start saying to yourself, well, if Fred Hoiberg can't get this done, then what are we going to do here? I mean, not that he's like some superstar coach, but he's had a lot of success, as we know, in college. And if he could do it at Iowa State, why can't he do it at Nebraska? So come on.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I agree. It's a whole nother podcast, maybe.
It is. By the way, you don't have a regular podcast, but you're still talking on other shows like Time to Time. So that's still out there.
Yeah. Everything that you can find is just on Nebraska.rivals.com. We do podcasts there consistently, routinely. So head over there and say hi to my awesome coworkers. They're really busting their butt right now, tracking all this transfer stuff, the new coaching staff. We're creating content every day. It's a fun and wild time right now.
Well, if you want more Nebraska coverage on our channel, just let us know in the comment section, description area, and hopefully we'll bring Steve back on a more consistent basis sometime soon. So, Steve, appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you in 2023.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg, for having me.